Hey, why did the picture go to jail? Because it was framed. Anyways, this is Graphing Inequalities 348 for seventh grade. And your I can statement is I can graph simple inequalities even if they are written in word form. All right, guys, let's get started. So our agenda is to first go over some very important definitions and facts, and then do a few example problems. All right. Make sure you get this definition written down about what an inequality is, because we're going to be talking about inequalities for quite a while now. We've kind of touched equations, and now we're going to apply what we know about equations to what we call inequalities. And that's just something that shows how two values are not equal. So here's an example of an inequality. This means 4 is greater than 2. And we know that's a true statement. That's a true inequality. But if I said that 2 was greater than 4, we know that that would be a false inequality. But what we're going to do is we're going to look at inequalities that actually have a variable, just like we've been looking at equations with variables and solving for those. We're going to try and get an idea of how we can represent inequalities visually with a variable. And one way to show what an inequality is to graph it. So let's look at that. So here's some important facts. The open point versus the filled in point. What do I mean by that? Well, take a look at this inequality. We have the variable x, and we're saying that x is less than 4. So we don't know exactly what x is. X could be an infinite amount of numbers. X could be 3. X could be 3.5. It could be negative a trillion. As long as it's less than 4, it fits the requirements of this inequality. So how do you show something like that? I mean, you couldn't sit around and write out all the different ways that x is less than 4. Well, one way we can do it is we can show it by graphing it. Now, notice I'm putting in a, whoops, I already made a mistake. I'm putting in an open circle here on the 4. Now, I'm going to draw a line. I'm not very good at drawing lines, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to draw a line across my graph with an arrow at the end. And what I'm doing is I'm showing with my line what x could be. So the reason I have a filled in circle is this means it could not be 4. So when it's filled in, it can't be 4. I keep saying this wrong. When it's not filled in, when it's open, it can't be 4. Okay? Because this says x is less than 4. And so what I do is I go to the 4 and I put an open circle because x can't be 4, and then I draw a line on over every number that's less than 4, and then draw an arrow showing that x could be anything less than 4, often to this infinity negative area. But on this problem here on the very bottom, it says x is less than or equal to 4. So instead of doing an open circle, I do a filled in circle. Nothing else changes except for my line gets worse, and I just draw over it, showing that x could be anything less than or equal to 4. So when a circle's filled in, it can be 4. So keep in mind, when you have this less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, use a filled in circle. If you have just a less than or greater than sign, use an open circle. Okay? Now, when you guys do these graphs, I'm going to expect them to look very, very good. My line is really curvy here because I'm using a slate and it's really hard to draw straight lines on it. But I'm going to want you to do your number lines with a ruler, and I'm going to want you to show what x is, and you could do it in a few different ways. If you had a highlighter, you could just highlight the part of the number line that x could be and then make your open or closed circle. But if you're just using a pencil, what you might do is you might make your number line with your ruler and then show the line above it. In other words, if you don't want to draw right on the same number line because you can't see it, what some people do to make it visible is they'll go right above their number line and show the graph of what x could be. And if you do this way, use a ruler for both lines, because I don't want that line nasty like this one is. Okay? So what was the big point here? Open circle means it can't be that number. Closed circle means it can. Here's a few more examples. If I was to complete this problem, this says y is greater than or equal to -2. So I have to find -2. I have to decide, am I going to use an open or a filled in circle? In this case, I'm going to use a filled in circle because y could be -2. But it's going to be greater than, so I'm going to show all the values greater than -2 that y could be using my little line here. All right, let's do a few more here real quick. This one gets a little bit more complex because there's actually 2 limits on x now. So this is the way we read this. X is not only less than 5, but it's greater than -1. Okay? That's why the x is in the middle. It's saying it's greater than -1, but it's less than 5. So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to go mark the limits on the number line. Now you're going to have to draw your number line, so make sure you scale it so you can show all the numbers that you need to show. So if x is going to be greater than -1, I'm going to need to put a filled in circle here at -1. And like I said, if you want to put the filled in circle right on your number line, if you can make it visible, that's fine. I'm going to do this one just above the number line to show you what that would look like. Okay? But x has to be less than 5. So I'm going to find 5. And I'm going to put whoops. I don't know why I keep getting this backwards, guys. An open circle, because it can't be -1 and it can't be 5. And then I just connect a line between the two limits of x. So x has to be less than 5, so that would be like 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. But it has to be greater than -1. So the only options for x is between -1 and 5. These are the only things x could be, and this is how I showed it on my graph. I used open circles because x can't be -1 and x can't be 5. Okay, there's going to be a few where you're given a problem in word form. And something like this you might come across. No more than 50 people were in the lunchroom. So what I would first do is I'm going to want you to write the inequality and then graph it. So we have to come up with a variable. I'm going to use the letter P, and I want that to represent people in the lunchroom. And it would be great if you would tell me what the variable represents. Okay? So I know that this number P can be no more than 50. So that means it could be 50. It just can't be more than 50. So I'm going to say that P is less than or equal to the number 50. Okay? So let's pretend you made a really nice line here with a ruler. Now I'm going to have to scale my number line so that we can see appropriate numbers. You're always going to want some numbers above and some numbers below. And I'm just going to do a few here to save some time. I'm going to start here with 70. I'll make this 60. This will be 50, and we'll go to 30 here real quick. So if P is less than or equal to 50, I use my filled in circle, and I'll change colors here to green. Filled in circle because it could be 50. And then I'm going to show, since I'm using a different color, I can write right on my line because you'll be able to see it. I'm going to show that it could be anything less than that. However, there's an implied limit here. Now, this is something that if you can do, I really, really want you to do it. Okay, I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be really cool if you took the next step and said, you know what? Because of the context of the situation, P has to be greater than 0. Why does it have to be greater than 0? It has to be greater than 0 because you can't have negative people somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and add that constraint. And when I add that constraint, that it has to be greater than 0, what I do is I come over here and I put an open circle because it can't be 0, and I connect the line. So P could be any number greater than 0 up to and including 50. Now, this 0 part's a little, it's a little extra. It's nothing said about it. I just got that from the context of the problem. This is the part where I really want to make sure you can at least, at least get this from the word problem. All right, guys, I know you're going to do great. Have a lot of fun. Use rulers. Make your lines perfect. Much better than what I've drawn here today. Good luck. Oh, wait, before I let you go, there's a number clue. The number clue, it's a multiple of 8. Okay, it's a multiple of 8.